Chapter 13 is all about delivery. Delivery can make or break a presentation. If you find the speaker engaging, you want to listen. If you find the speaker conflicted, inarticulate, distant, unprepared, then you're not going to want to listen to them. So I want you to have a good delivery. And what is a good delivery? What is something that's good? Now, Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart said in 1964, I know what it is when I see it. Well, he was talking about pornography, but it's the same for delivery. I know a good presentation when I see one. You have had the pleasure and displeasure of listening to numerous people in your lifetime, whether it be a short lifetime, 20 years, or a longer lifetime, 40 plus years. You've heard people talk. What engaged you? What intrigued you? What disappointed you? What turned you off? Now, I've had some speakers that were strict monotones. Today, we will talk about squirrel fishing. Squirrel fishing is a snooze fest. I'm going to sleep. and I've had other professors that had other quirks that kind of drove me crazy. And preachers and speakers when I was in the military. But I've had some good ones. And what I try to do, what I've always tried to do, is I remember the good ones and try to they say that mimicry is the sincerest form of flattery. I try to mimic them. I try to do what they did because it impressed me and I liked it. And that's what I want to do. I want my audience to like what I'm doing. Now, this presentation I give you here, sitting at my desk in my basement, this is not my favorite method of presentation. I would much rather be up walking around. I'd like to walk over and look at you and walk over and look at you and see things. But if I did that, I'd have to have a cameraman down here following me or a camera woman down here following me around with a camera. And so, because this COVID stuff's going on and we're distant, we kind of like have to put up with certain things. Now, there's a couple of different types of delivery. The one that you will worry about is called extemporaneous. We'll get to it last. There's reading. When the president declares war on another country, he uses a teleprompter. Well, the president usually uses a teleprompter anyway. But something as drastic as that, you want to make sure you get every word exactly precise. So you want to read. This isn't public reading, it's public speaking. Reciting. I'm sure most of you have been in a school play at some point in time, and you had lines that you had to learn, and you recited those lines. But like I told you in an earlier video, actors get paid millions of dollars and they blow their lines. You're not getting paid anything. This isn't about reciting anything and rote memorization. I don't want you to memorize every word you're supposed to say, because if you try to memorize it, that's why I try to tell you to avoid quotes. Unless it's a simple quote that you know very well, if you try to do quotes and you mess up, especially if you try to memorize them, then it flusters your whole presentation. Impromptu. Impromptu is off the cuff speaking. Now, this one baseball player years ago would come out from the dugout or come out from the locker room after the game, and so I told him he gave the best impromptu interviews. When the reporters are out there waiting to ask questions. He said, "What do you do?" He said, "I practice." It's kind of hard to practice for something you don't know, but he knew in his mind what they were going to ask him about. So before he walked out there, he planned his answers. Technically, that's not impromptu. Impromptu is off the cuff, but it's the best part of extemporaneous impromptu combined. Anytime you are giving a presentation, what I want you to do is know the material well enough that you can speak extemporaneously. That means you have knowledge inside of you and you use keywords to set you off and you can change it as you go. You might have this great introduction plan, and then on your way to school or to videotape it or wherever you're going, you saw an event or heard an event on the radio that you could tie into your presentation. That's extemporaneous speaking. You know the material well enough that you can talk about it, but you can also modify it for the situation as needed. Now, the impromptu part, what I loved about him practicing, and to me, this is what this class is all about. You know, you're here, you have to get a grade, yeah, all that other good stuff, but it's more about when you leave here in the real world. In the real world, if you're working for a company and the company asks you to give a presentation to the C-suite, I call it, you know, the CEO, the CFO, the CIO, all those people in charge, one of the best things you can do, practice your speech, of course, but you can also practice fielding questions. Have somebody play devil's advocate. Of all this information I'm giving, what are they most likely to ask me about? And have an answer. Because if you go into it and they go, oh, what, I hate this, the interviews. Well, that's a good question, Bob. Well, that's a good question, Bob. Well, I mean, you can use that as the stalling tactic so you can think of an answer. But if you don't know an answer, it's more, you look more professional if you say, I don't know, but I'll get you the answer. But on the other hand, you don't want to try to lie to somebody and BS your way through it because they may know the answer. And on the other hand, if that's the only reply you give people is, I don't know, let me get back with you. I don't know, let me get back with you. I'll have to look that up. Then you seem incompetent. So play the devil's advocate when you practice your speech and you get it down well. Ask some questions that you know may be asked. Now, when we give a presentation, we use different tools. One of them is your voice. What's the pitch of your voice? Is it high pitched? Is it low pitched? What is the pitch of your voice? If it's really high pitched, are you maybe excited about something? But don't be the monotone. Change the pitch of your voice. Change the rate of your voice. A lot of times students, I practiced my speech, Dr. Humphrey, and it was dead on 5 minutes, but when they got up there, it was 3. Why? Because they were nervous and they're really talking fast, because when they get nervous, they talk fast. So change the rate of your speech. Use vocal variety. Now, I have a big mouth. When I was in a master's program, one day the professor said, I need you to teach the main class, which was 250 students. And I'm thinking, yeah, I got this. He knows I know my stuff. He said, you got a big mouth, you can reach the back of the classroom. I was a little depressed at that comment, but I have a booming voice. And when I give a presentation, if something is important to me, generally I start speaking softer. I change the variety, the pitch, the rate of my presentation. And I've had other teachers that got loud when something was important. I'm already loud, so I just get quieter. Pauses. Pauses are fine. A lot of people are uncomfortable with a pause. But sometimes you need to take a moment to get your thoughts together. So don't be worried about pauses. Now, I had a student at another community college. She was talking really fast. And she knew she was talking too fast. And she was going to be really short on time. So she knew she needed to take a pause. So she stopped. And in her mind, she counted 1, 2, 3. She took a real slow count, which made it seem like an even longer pause. But pauses are fine. Sometimes quiet's all right. Sometimes a pause really expresses a point. If it's really important and you get loud or you get soft, but if you stop and let them think about that for a second, it is a way to highlight a certain thing. Pronunciation. I get driven up the wall with pronunciation. My daughter likes to say library. It's library. One day I told my grandson, she said, we're going to go to the library. I told my grandson, I said, she means library, baby, but she's trying to learn. She didn't like that. My son says fitting to. What? Fitting to. Okay, what does fitting to mean? I'm fixing to. What are you going to fix? No, I'm about to, Dad. I said, I knew what you meant, but I want to use English. Jeff Foxworthy, a comedian, says his favorite redneck word is sensuous. Sensuous up, get us a beer. You know, pronounce words that properly and use the proper word for the proper definition. Dialect. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier in the last presentation. Some people have a dialect, and some, not originally English speaking, have a dialect. Some people in the United States have a dialect. You ever listen to somebody in New York talk or somebody in LA talk, or they speak English a little differently than we do. And sometimes they have their own words or their own meanings, like we were talking earlier about definitions. My wife and I were in Louisiana, and I was pushing the cart, buggy, whatever you want to call it, at the grocery store back. You park in these certain places. And this lady said, "Are you saving that?" I kind of looked at the buggy, and I looked at her, and I looked at the buggy, and I didn't know it was in any danger. So I asked a Cajun friend of mine, and their local dialect, saving means to put away. When you get home from the grocery store, you save them by putting them away. So a lot of times we're going to run into this dialect problem, using words that we know what they mean, but other people don't. I have a funnier story than that. I was a student and an English friend of mine. We went to Office Depot to get school supplies. And she looked and looked and couldn't find what she was looking for. And she was an attractive young lady, about 22 years old. And some kid working at the store was like a high school after school job. And she said, excuse me, where do you keep the rubbers? And he was like, and then she got turned beet red because she knew what she asked. See, in English, they call the eraser a rubber. That's not necessarily what we call them here. But he said, we don't carry those, because that was his definition of what that item was. So sometimes our dialect causes us to have a different perspective of things, and sometimes somebody else's dialect. Body. What's your personal opinions? How you dress? I mentioned earlier in the first video of the series that I was in a polo, and I was last week too. I don't know if you can see it or not. The sweat's beading on my forehead. I'll be stopping after this and taking a break. What are you wearing? If I was giving a presentation at Oxbow Meadows and I wore a suit and a bow tie, and I was talking about saving the gopher tortoise, I'd look kind of funny. If I was doing a presentation at Oxbow Meadows and I wearing blue jeans and a flannel shirt or a polo shirt, I would be more acceptable. What is your appearance telling everybody? Movement. A lot of students freeze up. They're standing in front of the podium and shaking. Don't be stiff, relax. Move around, use gestures, use your hands. Now, a long time ago in communication, they had this little circle, a globe you would stand in. And this meant deep thought, and this meant seriousness, and this meant sadness. You had to have your hands in certain positions. We don't do that anymore. Thank God we don't do that anymore. But use gestures like you normally would. Now, there's a few gestures that you might use with your friends. I don't want you using in class. But use gestures. Make eye contact. Look at the individuals. If you're doing a video, look at the video. Look at the camera. I'm sorry. Don't look at the video. Look at the camera. Make us think you're looking at us and talking to us. Practice your delivery. Don't just read the speech sitting there on a couch with a TV in the background. Practice delivery. How are you going to do this? Practice on it, answering audience questions. The devil's advocate thing I was talking about earlier. Prepare. Prepare for it by knowing what they're going to ask. Prepare for it by knowing where you got your materials. Prepare for it by knowing how to pronounce your references' names. Keep a positive attitude. You can do this. I believe in you. You really can, and I really, really do. I know you can do this. You know, if I think I used this example before, it's like a pep rally. You don't start it out going, "Yeah, we suck. We're gonna lose." Don't start your presentation like that. Believe in yourself. Keep a positive attitude. Listen. Listen to what your audience is saying. If somebody asks you a question, a lot of times what you can do is two things. One is ask them to repeat the question. And you do that so you make sure you got the question right, and it gives you more time to formulate an answer. And the second thing you do is you repeat the question for the audience. Have you ever sat in the back of the classroom, had somebody in front ask the professor a question, and all you heard was wah, 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 wah. You don't know what the question was. I've had so many people start answering a question. I didn't know what it was. Like, hey, excuse me, what did they ask? So tell everyone what they asked and then answer to everyone. Don't just answer that one student asked a question. Make sure everybody else feels included. Be honest. You know, if you try to BS your way through something, somebody's going to catch you. Presenting online is unique. You have to control the environment. Yeah, my temperature control in here ain't that great right now, but it's the only environment I got. But what's behind me? I had a friend that was getting a job interview when I was at the University of Louisiana, and he was using the office computers. And the first thing we did was brought it up on a Skype. And behind him was this whiteboard that we wrote all over. Some of the things weren't the nicest things in the world, but we were college students, you know. And we were harassing one another and making inside jokes. And so the first thing we did was erase that. You know, and then we noticed that we could see so and so. And then finally, somebody walked in the middle of it. So, you know, he had a suit on from the waist up. We had the whiteboard cleared. And then I stood guard at the door to make sure nobody went in while he was being interviewed. Mute your phones. You can do that. If you have family and friends, have them in another room. Ask them to be quiet for 5 minutes. Adapt the nonverbal. I talk with my hands. I still do it. You see them all the time. But I try to look relaxed in my chair. I try to move around a little bit in my chair. I try not to be stiff, but adapt the nonverbals that you're going to be using in the video. You keep it at about eye level. Keep it a distance apart where you kind of feel the frame. I mean, I'm not like this all the time. Hi, everybody. My name's so-and-so. And I'm not way back here and barely on the or not kind of like this. And I'm not over here and out of the screen. And, you know, you're going to have to adapt to all that stuff and adapt the nonverbal to it. Adjust pacing and movement. If you're in class and you're doing a presentation, you ever watch somebody look like it's a ping pong match? Pacing back and forth. I move around a lot when I teach in class, and I do it for a few reasons. One is I want to get over and see with this person and look eye to eye, and I want to see with this person and look eye to eye, and I don't like standing in one spot. And rehearse the presentation as it is a presentation. Once again, don't just lay on the couch and read it. Say, I got this. Rehearse it. That will cover chapter 13, folks. And I will get it posted. But I got to reiterate this. Believe in yourself. That's the most important thing. You can do this. You can publicly speak, and you can do it well. And if you don't believe in yourself, it's going to hurt you. But have that positive attitude. Have your own pep rally and start it off right. I'll see you in chapter, well, you'll see me in chapter 14. Bye for now.